Brendon O'Connor is Associate Professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Brendon, good to talk to you tonight. Ted Cruz has declared early. Is it a sense of really getting in first, do you think?
Well, running for the presidency in some ways is a publicity tour for yourself, maybe for a book that you want to sometimes put out if you're going to be unsuccessful. Ted Cruz has enormous self-regard. He's probably one of the most academically talented Republicans we've seen maybe since Richard Nixon. He was an A student at Princeton and at Harvard, and he gave a pretty interesting speech at Liberty University, this enormous Christian university, last week. But I don't think he's going to be the next US president. He'll be someone who gets a fair amount of attention, but he's not really in the top tier of people likely to be president of the United States in 2017.
So the Republican side of things is quite crowded, isn't it? Are we going to see more declarations in the next few weeks, or do you think people will hold their fire?
Well, it's a tricky balancing act, because if you declare, the fundraising rules become a lot harder. If you're just having an exploratory campaign like Jeb Bush, money can pour in, you can accept free aeroplane flights, you can accept a lot more gifts and open sort of donations, where once you declare, your official campaign can only really accept about $5,000 donations, and you've got to rely on associated organisations which can pour a lot of money in, but you can't directly run them as part of your declared campaign. So in American politics, we're always talking an enormous amount of money, but it becomes a little bit more tricky once you declare.
That's interesting that you say that. So, say, for example, like a Hillary Clinton, of course, there's much expectation. Is she still gathering the funds before she gives her intentions?
Well, I don't think money is going to be a problem for the Clinton campaign. I think, you know, they are the clear front-runners on the Democratic side, but I think she doesn't want the scrutiny. I think once you declare, it's almost an open season to say, OK, we know for sure now what are the things we can dig up about your use of private email accounts to do your job as the Secretary of State, or what are the issues that we can revive from your last campaign or the Bill Clinton presidency. So in some ways it turns the heat up on you. I think it gives journalists an even greater sort of role to play to say, look, OK, you're an official candidate, let's scrutinise you in every which way we can. Where if you're hedging like Hillary is at the moment, and I think 90%, 99% chance that she will run, there's still an ability to push the journalists back and say, hang on, we haven't quite declared yet.
Absolutely. So the full expectation that she will. Who else on the Democrat side would be interesting to watch, just in case she doesn't, or, things, as you point out, the campaign against her becomes too heated?
Well, people will run. I mean, she won't have a coronation. And the Governor of Maryland has said this in the last few days, former Governor Martin OMalley, who was fairly popular, two-term Governor of Maryland. He looks likely to run. He's trying to get some name profile at this, almost ridiculously early to imagine. The election is in November of next year, and we're talking about it, but it's an open election. There'll be no incumbent president. Obama has to step down. It's obviously an enormous position to hold. So OMalley has been in the press in the last few days. Elizabeth Warren, I think, would be a real threat to Hillary, but she's only been in the US Senate for a couple of years. So it does look like the Democratic field will be weak against Hillary. Joe Biden might run, but I think will be more of a contest than people imagine at this point out. Hillary looks, such a dominant figure, where I think someone will emerge as an alternative candidate, and if she fumbles and stumbles and her campaign maybe is run as sort of top-down as last time, there could be a place for a type of grassroots person like Elizabeth Warren. Indeed,
who has also raised a lot of money herself. Let's look at the Republican side of things. Of course, a lot of people focusing on Jeb Bush and the thought of a third Bush in the White House, but who might be his, the other contenders on the Republican side, the serious contenders?
Yes, well, Jeb Bush is getting a lot of attention, obviously name recognition, a great sort of, novelty, that the thought of a third Bush president, as you say, almost inconceivable, I think, 6 years ago. Also from Florida, Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida with a Cuban-American background. I think he's really been gaining momentum in the last few months and emerged as a much more substantial figure than I think when he first got into politics. He seemed a bit of a one-trick pony, and I think he's broadened his appeal. Rand Paul has been kind of there or thereabouts, going down a little bit in his stocks recently. Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, really probably should have run last time in 2012 and might have been the Republican nominee. He's been plagued by a number of scandals, but is, I think, a very serious candidate. And the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, he's probably done, I think, the best of the sort of fairly unknown names in this, incredibly early season of the American presidential sort of nomination races. So Walker has got a lot of attention in Iowa, and that's really where you first make your name. There'll be a caucus in Iowa in January where it really sets the race alight. And if you don't do well in Iowa or New Hampshire, it's almost over. Unbelievably, those two states really hold sort of the keys to the nomination process.
Brendon, it's going to be fascinating, as you say, so many months, a good 18 months out, but we look forward to talking to you more over the course of the coming months. No doubt lots of twists and turns. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.